think it is too
Good.
controversial.
Good.
Mhm.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ed Hoops, the chairman of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. We will now convene the February 17th, 2022 meeting for the Yarmouth Conservation Commission as required by GL Chapter 30A, Sections 16 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. The public are able to attend this meeting either in person or via the alternative public access. Members of the public may watch the meeting live on Channel 18 or watch and/or participate in the meeting hosted in Zoom. The meeting notice provides necessary instructions to join the meeting via Zoom. Please note that audio, video, and screen sharing functions will be disabled for all attendees. You may request to participate by using the raise hand function. If everybody's here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, so we're all ready, so we don't need a roll call. With that, I will go right into the order of business here. Just as a general note, just in case anybody is here, for 2 Buttercup Lane, that item is going to be continued to March 3rd. So if you were here for that, we won't be taking any testimony, any public testimony on that or opening it, other than opening it to continue it. With that, we move into our first order of business, which is a request for determination of applicability. This is for Don Morrison, 9 Millard Road, Yarmouth, proposed construction of a 2-bedroom bathroom addition to existing house within land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Hi, my name is George Avery, and I'm the contractor for Don. We propose to build a 2-bedroom, 1-bath addition, and it falls in the flood zone. I just talked, or I got an email from Kelly on Friday asking about a silt fence and gutters going into dry wells. I called the surveyor who didn't have time to do that, and if needed, can be added and have a site plan revised and sent to you tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
That's more than acceptable, right? We'll take it. Okay. So I'm going to write to the commission. Anybody who has any questions on this project? Anybody?
No.
No.
Kelly, any comments, concerns?
Nope, nothing further.
All right. Anybody in the audience? Is there anybody on Zoom who needs
Zoom
to
land?
discuss this topic? It doesn't look it.
Nope, there's no hands raised.
We're all good. If not, would then somebody like to make a motion for a -2 with the condition that gutters and downspouts be added to the plan?
So moved, Ellie.
Is there a second?
Second, Tom.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
-2 is good, by the way.
Okay. All right.
I can tell by the
sorry.
way you're looking at me.
That's okay.
Everything is good to go.
I heard negative.
Yeah, just make sure you get that new plan submitted and
I talked to him this afternoon, and I told him I'd call him in the morning, and he said he'd revise it, and I'll get it to you guys.
okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
He was looking at you like,
Yeah.
What are you talking
That was
about? What
funny.
happened to me?
See all good? All right, next order of business is another request for determination for Mark Doran, 23 Glenwood Street, Yarmouth, proposed raise and relocation of a single-family dwelling within the buffer zone to a coastal bank and salt marsh. Kieran.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kieran Healy. I'm a land surveyor with the BSC Group, representing the owner, Mark Doran, who is with me here in the audience, and the architect, Gary House. We are proposing to remove the existing house and replace it with a new house on the site in Hyannis Park. You'll see from the plan that the existing house is much further south and towards the wetland. That has been removed and to be removed and relocated northerly further away from the coastal bank and also from the salt marsh / wetlands. The house is above the flood zone, so that is not an issue on this site. When Kelly went out, there was some areas that had been cleaned So we proposed a revised plan with some mitigation on that southwest corner near where I've got the words, the number lot 1 written on the plan. You'll see that hatched area, which is some mitigation in that area for an area that was cleared. Other than that, it is a pretty straightforward application for a raise and replace.
Thank you, Karen. Questions from the commission? Anybody?
No.
Kelly?
Can I just clarify, the existing structure is being relocated, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. It's just, it sounded like it was a rebuild from the way you described it, but that's fine. That's all I had.
Okay, anybody in the audience have any comments, questions on this one? And out in Zoom, I see no one.
Yep, I'm good.
Unless there's any further discussion, would somebody like to make a motion for a -3?
So moved, David.
Is there a second?
Second, Ellie.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Thank you, Kelly.
The next order of business is another request for determination of actability for John Arena, 22 Willow Lane, Yarmouth. The proposed septic system upgrade and second-story dormer addition within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and within land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Good evening, Chairman Hoops, members of the commission. My name is Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Downcape Engineering in Yarmouth Port, and helping John Arena, who was a hockey coach, coincidentally, with a septic upgrade and a little dormer addition on his lot here at 22 Willow Lane in Yarmouth. The site was delineated, wetland was delineated a while back, and was touched up. I think, did you get the wetland data sheets finally? A little bit of miscommunication on that, but we had those sent over. It was done by independent environmental consultants, who is a very competent professional wetland scientist by the name of Paul Shea. And so it's, again, fairly straightforward. There's a low area in the back. We're up. You can see when you do a septic upgrade, you try and get it as far from the wetland as you can. But we do have to respect some of the setback distances with the foundation that are in Title V. So it's as far as we can be, tucked up into the corner there, and a small retaining wall. There'll be a work limit line to help any siltation that's trying to sneak down towards the wetland will be trapped and kept clear of that wetland resource area. There's a new tank slash pump chamber combo going in there on the north, and then it goes over to the little dose system, which is in the northwest corner. So it's was staked out, and these septic upgrades like this and modest construction that's between the 50 and 100 are generally treated as requests for determination of applicability, which is the slightly easier filing with the board. We think this is a good candidate for such an approval, and I would be glad to answer any questions if you do have them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Questions from the commission?
If I may, I noticed there's no 35-foot line on this. So I'm guessing that the edge of that house is right at the 35 to the wetland.
Yeah, by scale, I think you're probably about right. It's an interesting situation where it's historically been cut right down into the wetland. The wetland is actually out into the low area there a little bit. It's one of these that dries up in the summer, but it's a little wet this time of year situation. But it's been in this way of a long time, and we're kind of keeping out of the 50 with all the work. We're very close to it anyway. I guess I would characterize it by being as far as we can be practically around that developed house.
The other thing I noticed is that the edge of the lawn is well inside the edge of the wetland. Are they going to continue cutting that, or are they going to let that go back to the? normal status of a wetland.
Yeah, again, it's a kind of a Cape Cod lawn. It's one of these situations that the groundwater fluctuates a good amount there, I think, which is why the vegetation does come up that far. Would like to just continue the status quo if we could. Again, it's not like it's turf, with a lot of fertilizer. It's a very Cape Cod-y, open habitat, which is, beneficial to hawks and mice, but I'd like to leave it the way it is.
No.
Have an aerial.
Nice thing about these masks is I can't see you smile.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
May I?
Yep, go ahead, David.
I'm with Ellie. I have a concern about the lawn being so far into the wetland. How do we make sure that they don't change that lawn from a Cape Cod lawn to a fertilized lawn? Do we put that in as a condition?
Would be happy to volunteer it. I know sometimes conditions are tough with RDAs, but the way I feel is if we present something to you folks to limit the, put it right on the face of the plan, then, we'd be fine with that. Because the last thing we want to do is hurt that area. But it is, it's a very small lot and it's a functional use for the summer. So we sure would be appreciated to leave it status quo.
Well, it was kind of hard to see what it was like because it was covered with snow, so that makes it kind of difficult.
I don't know if any good photos in here or not. The aerial is fair representation. for me.
It's just kind of snow and a little hard to see that, but the aerial is probably the most useful.
Is that one?
It's this one, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it's going from left to down toward the lower right, right?
Wetland?
That's how, that's the wetland, and the line
The line is
on the
here.
plan is the same thing, going straight across.
It's an interesting little area. It's an IVW, so it's not like it's bordering on a salt marsh or something that's particularly sensitive. But, it does contain some water and on the south end of it, we had it located many years ago. And it's, it's definitely a little over the 3,000 square foot where you guys would regulate that. So I think you're properly taking jurisdiction, but it's
It would be considered isolated land subject to flooding though, right? Under the state regulations.
yeah, sure. I wouldn't argue against that. Yeah, it's just a little kettle that's just kisses the groundwater enough to have a bordering vegetated wetland in it. And, I don't know whether it would hold a 1/4 acre foot or not, but it
Well, if it's-
likely would. And flood zone anyway, right? I'm trying to remember
Well, if
where.
it's subject to flooding, then it would require the
It's AE 11.
1/4 acre annual flooding, right? I mean, does it meet that?
It's probably close. We'll concede
That way we take a
jurisdiction.
buffer off that, right? We don't take the buffer off that.
No, there's no buffer to that, but it's, I guess, activity in that area if it's cutting in that area.
Well, why wouldn't we want to, I think we should at least put some sort of marker or demarcation along it so that we don't see any further incursion. Like from that point going like that.
Yeah, had they done some improvement here? Is this fill or something here that, I don't know, this was just an aerial from,
Yeah, I don't know.
2020.
That area is a couple, so it gradually does go up over there, but I have no idea if they were redoing the lawn in
I
that
don't know
picture.
that they loamed and seeded that area and then the area south of that could just be left undisturbed to revegetate as wetland.
They just doing demarcation, like, you could do stones or,
'Cause that almost follows, I would guess, the wetland line.
I would think so. It
Yeah.
looks like,
Yeah.
it kind of looks like that, so. Yeah, I would suggest you just put some sort of like a demarcation, either stones every 10, 20 feet, or you could do a single rail fence right along that, essentially following that, the difference between that lighter and darker curve.
All right. Between A2 and A3 flags, be reasonable right on the wetland line there and that, let
Yeah, I
that
think it's just-
naturalize.
That's where the wetland line is, right?
Yeah, I think generally
Actually, it's
speaking.
going along
Yeah, that's where, because I didn't really agree with the
The
wetland line
A2A
because it's kind of a straight
is
line
really
between
two.
2 points, whereas the topography indicates that the wetland probably goes closer to the house. But in terms of the usable yard area that they have here with the area they've loaned and seeded, it's kind of consistent with that. So that
So
line may be reasonable.
using
as
this
a-
line.
Yeah, use that line as the
All right,
demarcation.
so I'm good with that, Dan. You understand what we're saying there?
On the town aerial, the light line there?
But we're thinking that this line, the line that you have is as the edge of wetland,
Yeah, the A2, A3.
well, between A2 and A3 will actually suffice if you mark it along that.
All right, that sounds
Along that
reasonable.
line, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're, right? We're in agreement?
That sounds
If you
fine.
just mark it along that line.
Yep, if you would be so kind as to accept it with a revised plan showing said marks along that line, I think that would be happy with that, Thank you.
Okay. You're good with that?
Yeah, we just have the matter of timing with, to get the permit out within 21
How are
days.
we-
'Cause,
When to get accepted?
I think it'd be dated up there.
What'd you say, 20 foot apart, Ed, or what would you think for those stones?
Yeah, it's a 10 to 15 feet apart, Dan, if you're doing stones,
February 2nd.
February 2nd.
So
We're
it'll-
tight.
It'll be during the week next week that would need to have it.
Mr. Chairman, do you have a size in the stones or something easily moved or not easily moved?
Yeah, I mean, normally you can do like bollards. If you do like the bollard, you have to usually bury part of the bollard. And so you want to leave like, 18 inches above so people can clearly see it.
What about like a 12-inch average size
Well,
stone
like
buried?
yeah, boulder like that would be good.
Hit
like
that with a
like-
mower, you'll know it.
It's like that by that,
Yeah.
okay? And did you ask me any questions? You're good. And Dan, you need to do this one real quick because we're under the gun to get this out within the 21 days. So by
So if we-
Monday, Tuesday?
Be no problem. That's an easy revision. I got some guys that can do that.
Preferably tomorrow,
Oh,
Tomorrow's
yeah,
no- yep.
actually.
if you can manage it, but otherwise it'll be Wednesday, that 22nd.
Piece of cake.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so we're good with that. Anything else you need? Anybody in the audience on this? Nothing in Zoom?
No hands raised.
Unless there's any further discussion among the commission, then could I get a motion for a -2 and a -3 with a revised plan showing the discussed demarcation of the no mow or no disturb zone?
So moved, Ellie.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Rick.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Super. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Dan. All right, now moving on to notices of intent. First one is Carl Von Hoen, Town of Yarmouth, proposed long-term maintenance dredging with beach nourishment, disposal of dredged sediments at various locations within the Town of Yarmouth and Town of Dennis. But before we get into all of this, I want to let the commissioners know we don't have there are no resource areas that are marked on any of the plans with this. So I'm hesitant to do any kind of discussion from a wetlands perspective. But I do know that there are some people who are interested in it from a public comment standpoint. So I'd certainly like to be able to open this and at least take the public comment, and then we'll have a continuance to come back once we get the resource areas demarcated on the plans, and then we can have the discussion as far as the wetlands protection side of it. That good, Carl? You understand? You're good with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Would you like to make any kind of a quick presentation to at least?
Good evening. I'm Carl Von Hoen, Director of the Division of Natural Resource for the town of Yarmouth. I see some new faces. Others have been around for a long time. This project has just had a 10-year permit expired. This is the first town-wide beach nourishment and dredging permit in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Prior to that, we had a 10-year permit for the Bass River dredging, which set the stage for a town-wide. Part of the reasoning to go to a 10-year permit for the permitting agencies as well as for the town was simply because we didn't need to go before all the permitting agencies, environmental agencies, and you folks multiple times as 3-year permits were running out. The cost of that would have been astronomical. So going at it once every 10 years made a lot of sense. The permitting agencies thought that was great, less review and work on their behalf, and allowed the town to be able to plan out for 10 years for rotating dredging projects as funding became available. This project that you see before you is identical to what was already permitted in the previous 10-year plan. There is no changes to it. I did see the letter from Division of Marine Fisheries. I have a couple of concerns with that letter. One being the no dredging within 75 feet. It's a blanket statement. We have channels that are maintained that from time to time eelgrass does grow in. So to require 75 feet from any eelgrass isn't conducive to dredging the navigable channels here in Yarmouth or anywhere, to be honest. A lot of times the channels have fine sediments that settle out and eelgrass extend into that fine sediment and settle out. So we do need to maintain the channels as they are planned and as they have been for, probably 50 plus years. So navigational charts are based on those channels and whatnot. The other is, for the first time, the approach channels, those are channels that are coming in at primarily Bass River and Parker's River that come in from Nantucket Sound to the end of the breakwater. In the previous plan and under an agreement that Barnstable County Dredge had with DMF, there was no time of year restriction on the approach because it allowed for anadromous fish and all the other species to go around the dredging and not be impacted by the project, in turn requiring a time of year restriction. So those will be brought up to Marine Fisheries, but other than that, everything is what you've previously permitted. As you can see, there's a lot to it. The main dredging is the lower portion of Bass River, the mouth and just inside the breakwaters at Parker's River, the entrance into Mill Creek and Lewis Bay, the entrance into Pine Island Cove in Lewis Bay, the entrance channel into the Englewood Basin, and some dredging near the Englewood Marina. Those are the bulk of the dredging projects. The material, if suitable for beach nourishment, will go to beaches in close proximity to those projects. And will either be, dredging will either be mechanically or hydraulically. If it's hydraulic, then the material will be pumped up onto the beaches, which actually provides for a more longevity for the profile of the beach because the sand is placed on the beach wet and it firms in, or mechanically, and that mechanical material would be taken out, put on a barge, and then trucked to these locations. I think in brief, that is the project. If you have any specific questions or the public has any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay, thanks, Carl. We'll start, actually, I'm going to start, I think we'll hold off. Can you guys hold off there? Do you have anything that's really pressing that has to be answered right now, or? Okay. So then I'll turn it over to public comment first. Is there anybody in the audience here who has any comments or questions for this project? Okay, if you would come on up, you can come up to the stand here. Make sure you state your name and your street address.
Okay, it's Cindy Van Dorn at 4 Malfa Road in West Yarmouth. I have seen, I've had Kelly come out, I've had Carl come out because I see Malfa Road is on the enrichment area because it had just was like the Grand Canyon after a few storms. But I was kind of confused with some of the mapping that showed that there was going to be dredging, like from the one site was 11. I think the one site was 11, Jeff, where Malfa Road is. But the one map said there was green, that dredging would go from Highland to Glenwood. But no beach nourishment. Well, in that area, from Glenwood to Malfa Road, it's just pure stone now. We've lost all the sand we have. It's all gone to the end of Vernon Street, which is way out there. And I can see why they would maybe dredge some of that area. But we are losing all our sand right at the corner of Malfa Road and going towards Vernon Street. So I was hoping that we'd get some sand enrichment, nourishment in that area because it's just going to be stone pretty soon. But from Glenwood all the way down to before Vernon Street, we're losing all our sand. It's just becoming very stony there. Now, Vernon Street has all the sand we once had, so it goes way out almost to the channel. There's not even room for boat moorings there anymore. They've all shifted over in front of us. So I was hoping that that would be taken into account, that no beach nourishment would be put in front of Vernon Street, but definitely from Glenwood to before Vernon Street, we are losing all our beach. In fact, Kelly, you've been out there, you've seen the situation, and I had talked about trying to figure out how to keep our eelgrass from, because on high tide now it's right up to our eelgrass. There's no beach at all anymore. So I just was bringing that to everyone's attention and hope that maybe we could get a little beach nourishment there. And, Malfa Road is right on the corner there. And so that was the only comment I had.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carl, did you want to?
Sure. There is no dredging in that location. The beach nourishment is at the ends of some of the town ways to the water, and those locations are so noted. So if we do have significant erosion, we can place sediment there in order to prevent the road from being compromised. We are unable to nourish private property. Private property needs to have their own permits and go through the process. If for some reason we have excess sand that we can't use anywhere, then a deal or a program could be worked out where the private property owners could purchase that material. However, at this time, we can't do any nourishment on private property.
Even though it's adjacent to that Malfa Road area?
Correct. The only area we can do is within the road layout that goes right down to the water. because that's the only thing that is owned by the town.
Okay, yeah, come on up and again, state your name for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Jeff Schrago, 45 Park Avenue. I have a question, Carl. You just said that the renourishment would only take place at the end of the public roadways, because that's all you could do. Why is it that back in 1995, you were able to renourish the entire beachfront area?
That was a separate project with the Army Corps of Engineers for the dredging of the Hyannis Harbor Channel. At that time, each private property had to sign off and give an easement for the nourishment to take place for that project. All those permits have since run out, and that was the permits that were for that particular project of the Hyannis Channel.
I recall that. I signed that permit giving you permission, the Army Corps of Engineers, to put the beach renourishment on the beach in front of my property. I'd be willing to sign another such document to give you permission to do the renourishment in front of my property.
Yeah, at this time, all the permits have run out. So surveys, grain size analysis, all that work would need to be done by the private property owners at this time.
Will dredging be done in front of the private beachfront properties?
No.
Because on the map, it's the first map in volume 1 of your packet, all the way at the very beginning. It shows highlighted in a lavender color that from Malfa down to Island, all of those properties are highlighted as being areas that are going to be dredged.
Yeah, that's what I was bringing up before. That was confusing.
Is this one you're talking about?
It's volume, I can't see.
This is volume 1. This is just an overall map of the town. Is that the one you're? I can put it up on the screen.
I was like startled to see that I've been here over 10 years. I signed that last license.
So this is dredging
Well,
above
no,
us. So this is to the dredging area, which this is. Yeah, let me throw it up on the screen so everyone can see. It's this figure here, if you want to.
I take it it's the map that identifies the abutting
Yes, it is.
notifications.
Yes, that's correct,
Yeah.
Carl.
We have to identify properties within a certain distance from any of these nourishments or dredging. That's the map that you're referring to. So the close proximity that you are to the end of Vernon, is it correct?
See, here's the, sorry, you can't see it. Here's the properties that are highlighted. Yeah, that's my property right there.
Correct. So,
And then when I looked at the key on your map.
Yeah.
It shows dredging abutters. So I assumed that meant there was going to be dredging in front of our properties because
No.
it says we're dredging abutters.
I did not catch that. That should be pink because the nourishment sites are Grove, Vernon, Malfa. Those are the areas that would be nourished. So I missed that coloration. I apologize. My consultant didn't pick up on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to make a comment about that. Excuse me.
Can-
Vernon Street, which is said that it was going to be nourished, they have so much sand there. There is no need to put any sand in that area. They're overwhelmed with it. It's gone all the way almost out to the channel now. So,
As stated prior, we'll nourish those areas when it's needed. It's
okay.
not something that will be done on an annual basis or may not even be done for this 10-year period if there's
Okay.
ample sand there protecting it.
Yeah, well, Malfa Road definitely needs it because it was like the Grand Canyon after
Yep.
that last storm. Both Carl and Kelly were out there to see that.
That's right.
One comment, I know that you said that because it's private property there, we can't have the beach nourishment. Why is it that that's an open beach then for people?
The only area that is public is the way that goes down to the water. I understand there are people that have some deeded access from the roads behind there, but someone coming from someplace else, let's say Yarmouth Port, that
Oh,
goes
okay,
over there,
but the-
cannot plop a chair in front of your private
Okay,
property.
but people in the neighborhood can, is that what it is?
They may, I understand that there are some deeded rights along there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience have any comments, questions? Sure, come on up and state your name for the record, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Brian Wall, and I'm an attorney. I have an office in Sandwich, and I'm here tonight representing Andrea Gravelin and Ken Stout, who are trustees of a trust that owns property at 7 Grove and 9 Vernon. And ironically, what my clients would like is the opposite of the first speaker. Instead of having nourishment placed on their beach, they actually would ask that it not be placed. Is there a mask mandate in the building, or can I?
You may, while you're
just
addressing the
stop when
board,
while I'm talking, yeah.
you can.
They're so effective that you lose your
Right.
breath. Thank you. In any event, my client's properties are situated at the end of 7 Grove Street and 9 Grove Street, right between two areas that are proposed for depositing dredge spoils on the end of on the end of Grove Street and the end of Vernon Street. And my clients are concerned with the proposal to put spoils in these locations for a couple of reasons. The first of which is that the upper portions of the beach in this particular area are vegetated, and the vegetation there is rather fragile. It has struggled to develop because of the wind and because of the beachgoers, the foot traffic that tramples it. And my clients are concerned that placing dredge spoils on this beach may directly impact this vegetation by covering it, which would destroy it, or indirectly impacting it by the fact that the soil, the sediments might be blown by wind or disturbed by waves, and as a result end up on top of this vegetation. So ironically, instead of being happy about beach nourishment, which many people are, like the first speaker, my clients are actually concerned that in this particular area, the nourishment might actually destabilize these particular beaches. This impact is also generated from the manner in which the soils are proposed to be placed. If you look at the drawings, the town has elected to place spoils on town-owned areas, obviously within the town. And as Mr. Van Hoen said, the town can't put it on private beach because it violates other aspects of the law. But placing spoils on the ends of public ways in narrow little segments doesn't necessarily help the beach. The beach is not aware of private property rights. The beach has its own profile that's developed by wind and wave action. And by placing the spoils in these discrete locations, common sense tells us that they're going to be impacted by wind and waves and spread out. And again, that goes to my client's concern about impacts on vegetation. And finally, and this kind of, I didn't know the first speaker was going to speak, but my clients contend that nourishment in this area is not necessary. There's going to be a continuance. I didn't have enough time to make copies of all of this. And I am not a coastal geologist or a scientist, so what I'm about to say is not scientific and it's not my representation. But common sense, if you look at an aerial photograph, I think many of us on the Cape know that when there's a jetty that juts out into the water, it intercepts the natural flow of littoral sand that's suspended in the water, and it accretes on the updrift side and it erodes on the downdrift side. And the jetty that is to the west of Grove Street, it's accreted all the way to the end. And so in other words, the area of Grove Street and Vernon Street appear to be in the downdrift area. And again, I'm not a scientist. I'm just saying if you look at the picture, it appears to be in the downdrift area and is accreting naturally. And it doesn't really need any more sand, whereas it seems like other parts of town do. So for all of those reasons, my clients would respectfully ask the commission to consider not authorizing depositing soils on these two areas and to use it on other sites that might need it more. And I think that the graphic that was put up at the very beginning that shows all the sites, if I counted them correctly, there's about 36. And so there's plenty of other areas to put the sand, especially that might need it, again, like the first speaker that came up. So those are my clients' concerns. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Carol, did you have any comments or?
I
Every
did-
once in a while, we do have people that don't want to see the nourishment. As I stated prior, it's primarily to maintain protection for the ends of the roads. Beach nourishment, yes, sand migrates along the shoreline. That's why there are areas that are starved and others that have increased in profile. And yes, there's no stopping that sand from migrating along the shoreline. But as I stated previously, this nourishment is to protect the ends of the roads, not to build tremendous beaches on these 40-foot wide ways to the water. And nourishment would only occur if, in fact, nourishment was truly needed due to erosion. We do have plenty of other places we can utilize that sediment all across town.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience has any comments, questions on this one?
I think there's a online one.
All right.
There's no hands raised.
Nobody raised? Anybody on Zoom? Raise your hand digitally now.
Don't see any.
No?
Someone there, but didn't raise his hand.
All right. It doesn't appear as though we have anything on Zoom. So we are going to continue this.
You want comments from the commission?
Oh, there's a comment. Let me have a look at the chat. Oh, that's just him instructing people. Yeah, I've got it. Thank you.
You're all set?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll continue and then the commission will discuss at the next hearing, if that's all right. Unless there's, like I said, unless there's anything that's absolutely pressing that you have to do right now.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Would we be informed, the abutters, when that next meeting?
That's what we're about to do right now. Hold on for just a minute. I got to find out when we're going to be able to do it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
What are we looking at for continuance dates?
I think, Carl, we were looking at a date of March 17th.
Yes, I will not be available on the 3rd.
Okay, so March 17th. All right, so it'll be March 17th. That'll be the next time
Clock here.
it'll be here. Okay. Let's see. Would somebody like to make a, did you have something else?
Nope.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue this to March 17th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Tom.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There, unanimous. We will see you the 17th, Carl.
Carl, I moved the application from 10 years ago in my office the other day from one spot to the other.
All right, next order of business is. Wait, hold
I think you and I were the only two here for the last 10 years
Thank
ago when
you.
we signed it.
I believe
on. Thank you, Carl.
Maybe Ed, but I have it still in my file.
Next order of business is another notice of intent for Brady GI
Oh,
29 nominee trust. Elliot H. Patty and Ian D. Hyatt, trustees, 1059 Great Island Road, Yarmouth, proposed renovation of a deck area within the buffer zone to a coastal bank and replacement of beach access stairway within a coastal bank, coastal beach, and land
that
subject to
all
coastal storm flow. What?
Just have him move the thing forward.
Oh.
Thank you.
I was going to suggest that.
I'll move that anywhere you need.
Thank you for the introduction. I am Bob Perry with Cape Cod Engineering and representing the Brady GI 29 Trust applicant Elliot Patty here at 1059 Great Island Road. I'll summarize what's before you. You have a plan and a notice of intent that was filed. We also filed, just so you had some detail, the plans relating to the work around the house. The site plan, sort of a large scale item, and it shows you that some of the work that's proposed is outside the buffer zone from the coastal bank. On the main house, there is deck and patio work, basically transitioning some of the decks to patios. And we provided you with the detailed dimension plans of those so you could see what's going on in a detailed way. The land is quite level, and there really should not be, and it can be controlled if you like with some form of a silt fence. We just don't see that there be any impact to the coastal bank working within the buffer zone in the areas close to the house. We did not show a work limit, but we felt that the work will be confined very near the house. And if you've been there, you know it's quite open, a very scrappy lawn area, which is a native fescue. It's actually, it's intended to be that way so that it would just be an informal, very slow growing, non-watered lawn. And then closer to the bank, we have a very thick rugosa rose crop that's growing there with other things. That's what's going on at the house. The second piece of this project is right at the coastal bank in the very south portion of the site. There's an existing stairway there today that goes down to, if you've been there, you can see how rocky it is. A lot of those rocks are natural, but back in the 50s, a lot of granite was delivered to this location. And the stone groin formations that you see on Great Island are all licensed under the Chapter 91 process. There's a lot of old concrete walls that were poured down there back at some point in time when somebody wanted to slow the erosion. The island itself is very durable, so that this area is not moving very quickly. It's all rocky. There is soil. The bank is a very durable glacial till of stone and soil. And yet, of course, the stairway that's there today was installed. So what's proposed is a replacement stairway. And it is, I think the applicant's interest was to have a small sitting area. So there's a small landing at the mid station and a small landing at the top. Two common features to break the rise up. Open frame, open riser. We did show the two boulders at the bottom just because that's two stones of very, very many stones, but just to show you how it fits. And it is in the location of the old stair. All of this work would be done by hand. And I had looked at this and kind of compared it to some of the more sandy coastal banks that we have and all around the Cape. You can look up in Wellfleet and Eastham and portions of Dennis, where you have rapidly eroding coastal banks. Virtually every property has its own stairway. This is much more stable than that, so we don't see any comparable risk of damage. I think if it's properly built, bolted connections and firmly embedded in the ground, this stairway will do quite well with the exposure. It's well above the tide line. All that work to do this would be handwork, as I said, and they'll just access the work area by walking across the lawn and carrying materials in and out. So that's really the summary of what's before you, and I'd be happy to take your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Before we get into it, I just want to, this has received the Mass DEP number, so that's SE 83-2324.
Yes.
And I'm just going to start it out because I'll make my own, like I have one comment. And I would say that I don't have any issues other than the stairway as it's coming down should be, I'm not supportive of that midway landing. I would support it if it's I would support the steps going straight down, just like as a normal set of staircase. But I would not want to see nor would I support any of the mid-level platform area where you're widening the area. It should be kept to the 4 feet wide and be left at that. That's just my opinion. But I'll turn it over to the rest of the commission if anybody has any other comments, questions.
Well, I have to agree with you, Mr. Chairman, on the 4-foot width. Could they possibly just put a 4-foot by 4-foot platform there just to break it up?
Oh, yeah, I mean, if it's as a landing, yeah, I don't have an
landing,
issue
yeah.
with keeping it,
Right.
stretching it out that way, but I just don't think I think we should keep everything within a minimal footprint. 4 foot is more than enough to get you up and down the steps. And if you need if you put a mid-level landing there, I don't have an issue with that. It's just, I don't want to see, so 6 or 8 feet.
Well, may I speak to that? Because I appreciate the comment. There was, if you've been there, when you go down that stair, it's part of the enjoyment is the view. And so some form of bench that would face west, which looks toward the Point Gammon Tower, I think that we could work a bench into something that would be a smaller platform than this. If we did have a 4-foot width and we maintained the 4-foot width, but through typical carpentry, we could just lever enough room for a seat. It would be not that size. And that, I think, I don't have the recollection. I think we put it on the plan. It's 4 by 7, I think. And it could easily be 4 by 8.
4 by 8.
Oh, yeah, I want to make it clear that the intent of that is for a small sitting area where a couple of people can enjoy the view, watch sunset and off season. So the counterpoint for me to ask you about is, if we hold the 4-foot width to the stairs, which actually isn't 4 feet, is overall perhaps 4 feet, we're 42 inches inside. We would like to just get, say, 16 inches at that location for a bench, and I'd be happy to change the plan for you. That acceptable? Just means that for that 4-foot zone,
Cantilevering it
Right.
essentially over the,
just a little bit of a boost out to the right side as you're looking at it, so that a bench would not interfere with someone's ability to go up and down. I think a seat for a bench is about 16 inches. And it's really a special place. And if you're sitting at the top, you're up into the wind and in view. But if you're down halfway, you can also use it for a resting point. But it is actually quite special. And part of what comes before you are requests for people to have things that they can enjoy, not just use. And I'm just hopeful that you could see your way to a small seat here.
I guess I would be willing to entertain it, but I want to see an absolute minimal.
It would be. It would
to that.
cut this down by 12 square feet anyway, down to where we're 4 by 5.5.
Be my. That would be. I guess I could go with that.
Okay.
I could go with that.
We appreciate that.
That's fine.
Okay. Anybody else? No. Kelly.
I do have another comment. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to bring this up now, but Heidi left a note saying she found an old order of conditions, and it looks like it was either not scanned into our online files or is being misfiled.
That's okay. How old is it?
It's for the construction of the 2 buildings.
Okay.
So I have
That would
it
be
in here, but
91.
given that I'm just
Right.
finding this information now, obviously, we would therefore have to give you time to submit a request for it. 1990.
I was around then, and so those are readily handled, because I don't know if this is fairly minor project. I can state to you now that my understanding of the condition of that property is that, and I've looked at the plans that were prepared in 1990 and 91,
I can get
things
that
are
done
in
fast.
strict compliance. So in order,
Yeah.
a COC would be, I think, straightforward.
I just saw an interesting condition on there because I automatically saw the
Uh-oh.
35-foot setback and I was like, oh, there was supposed to be a 35-foot vegetated setback, but the wording of the condition is that the lawn area within the 35-foot setback will remain undisturbed.
The lawn area.
So I assume that means there wasn't a 35-foot vegetated buffer. I'm not sure why they would call it out, but
Well, it seems like they're saying don't mow it in the 35, right? Leave it go natural. Isn't that what?
no, I just spotted that in there. So we can maybe just, we'll have a look at it when you're
And
reviewing.
we will prepare the
about that one.
documentation for a COC, which means we'll be reading that order.
Yeah.
And I'll look at the plan. You may have something on file because I think we've looked at your files.
Okay, so it may have been misfiled. It's just not in this property address. So
Find it at
yeah.
the land court and I'll call you
Okay.
and hope it's not in the way of this.
Okay, so we can, do you want to continue? Do you want to close it out then? We can close it out with the revision, with a
Receipt of a revised plan?
yeah, condition of the revised plan.
Yeah, we would just need to receive the revised plan. If we said within 14 days to allow us to issue, allow 7 days to issue the permit within 21 days.
We'll turn that right around to you.
That-
If you want to, I mean, they'd like to take care of the business this
Yeah, we-
spring. So if we could have an order of conditions in a couple of weeks, is that, or, I mean, I'll just bring you a revised plan if you'd like to take a vote tonight and close
Sure.
out. if
Yeah,
that's-
so we'll take the vote. We'll do a pending receipt of the revised plan and then the issue or the submittal of the COC request, right? You're good?
That's
You're-
perfect.
You're good with that?
Yes, thank you.
Everybody good with that?
Yes.
In the audience? Anybody in Zoom? Would somebody like to make a motion to that effect then?
So moved, Ellie.
Second.
Second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One, did I say one? Okay. So it's 6-1.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Bob.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I know you'll be saying when this is over, who was that masked man?
Very mysterious.
For, I'm sure.
That's the width of the platform.
Good night.
Well,
Yeah.
Aren't they
It
all,
has
though?
been a long time.
That's why we're on Cape
I
Cod.
used to be in here all the time. I think so. So he's
We
being
gave him his welcome page.
7 this year.
All right, next order of business is another notice of intent for Alexander Nemanoff, 2 Buttercup Lane, Yarmouth, proposed raise and replace of a single-family dwelling with new septic, landscaping, and mitigation within the buffer zone to a coastal bank and salt marsh. This item is going to be continued to March 3rd. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So
So-
moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Brick.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. And we'll pass it down unsigned.
Ellie, you made the
Ellie.
motion?
Kelly moved,
Mhm.
Rick seconded.
Not signed.
Next order of business is another notice of intent for SE 83-2321. Joseph Gilmore, 181 River Street, which is now 150 South Street, Yarmouth, is raised 2 single-family dwellings and replaced with 1 9-bedroom single-family dwelling, pool, new septic, redeveloped driveways, and planting mitigation within riverfront area, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and buffer zone to coastal bank.
Good evening.
Afternoon, Dan.
Chairman Hoops, members of the commission. My name is Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Downkeep Engineering in Yarmouth Port. We're helping Joe Gilmore, who's in the audience out, and his builder, Chris Kenny, is here with me as well, in case you have any questions of those folks. This is a nice landmark property along the old section of South Yarmouth along Bass River, riverfront property. Very valuable property, very nice area. Just to the south of us is the famous, one of the famous residents, Bob Childs, who's 90-something and still running strong over at the case dealer there on Great Western Road in Yarmouth. I spoke to his son Chuck, who had looked over the plans and was friendly with the project. This is a project that it's got a licensed bulkhead. It's got the little sand catchers, as it was spoke of earlier in the evening, out there along the river. There's big piers on either side. The channel is out a little ways. The resource areas are fairly numerous. You've got a riverfront there. The bulkhead itself forms a coastal bank. Perhaps in the day it was a little bit shallower, but it's again, it's an established bulkhead. The license number is listed there on the plan as number 8926. And again, that's an older number. There's 2 homes on the property currently. And what the proposal is to do, and again, well, with respect to the resource areas, you've obviously got the river, the coastal bank, there's a flood zone. There's actually a velocity zone that comes onto the site a little ways and clips the existing porch and home. And so that's an important fact of, whether you build or don't build. I think it's going to be leaning towards the analysis of moving and removing that house or raising it, as they say, with a Z, and replacing a little further back. Because of those velocity zone issues, if you get the wave action against a home, you can get some splintering and a real mess up the river. If you rebuild it higher and safer and further back, it's an advantageous during one of those catastrophic type events. So you've got a flood zone that comes in on the property. Again, it's a very level and sandy, easy to work with site. If it has any downside, it's a little bit low. It is subject to coastal storm flowage. The rear of the site is and will remain a beautiful forested area, nice habitat for birds, bees, and small mammals. Currently, you come in off the side road there, River Street. We're going to eliminate that and just have a nice little winding road that's actually there now, but we're going to, restone it and so forth out to the main street. So we'll, I believe, get a new address off of South Street so that it'll, the fire department will get there properly. But it has always historically been named 181 River Street. So there's a number of resource areas and 2 homes. So the total number of bedrooms is not going to go up any. We're going to maintain the same. And as is with a lot of these homes, there's more bedrooms than people and so forth. But, in a couple of weekends of summer, they might fill up. But for the most part, and a lot in the winter time, there's hardly anyone there. But again, 2 homes being reduced into 1. You have a number of regulations and concerns whenever we redevelop on the river. And one of the primary things we look at in is a redevelopment on a riverfront. You try and make the conditions better than what's there now. The overarching read of the Rivers Act is that if it's a redevelopment, first of all, you don't need to do an alternatives analysis because there's already a home there, and it doesn't really make sense to pretend that there's not one there. But also, you can go no closer than existing to the riverfront, and you do have to do a 2-to-1 mitigation if you're increasing hardscape in that riverfront. And so, but they do allow it as long as you mitigate it. And what you do there is take degraded areas and areas that aren't good habitat, and you make them a better habitat. And one of the things that we concern ourselves with on the river is fertilizer flow into the water and nitrogen. The lower river isn't perhaps as sensitive as other areas, but because there's a huge amount of water that comes in and out of there every day. But it is diluted very, very significantly. However, it is still something that you can look at, and you folks do definitely look at it. And what we're going to propose here is pulling up all that beautiful Kennedy-esque landscape lawn and plant a wildflower meadow. We've had success with these wildflower meadows up the river, and they come in really nicely. The birds and bees, well, especially the pollinators who have, the bees are struggling. And so to get a nice area where they can have some foraging habitat, especially a nice expansive stretch like this, we're looking at about 7,600 square foot of lawn being pulled up and planted with a beautiful wildflower meadow. And we've noted on the plan that we're going to supplement that seed yearly as required. It can thin out in time if you don't, reseed it. But that's the trick, and we've had great luck up the river. They're just beautiful to look at. There's a flowing variation of heights and types of flowers and wildflowers that can last all summer long if they're well maintained. And we're going to put 4x4 posts on the back of that. So to get back to the flood zone issues for a second, if you look, the velocity zone goes through the porch. That makes that entire building within a velocity zone. And you can see dashed with the diagonal hatch, the existing home. We could arguably just move it back a little bit, but moving it back quite a bit as we've proposed, on the order of 50 feet or so, pulls us completely out of the velocity zone and allows us that wide swath of mitigation out front while still having a little bit of lawn left. There's really, it's going to be a fairly modest lawn. There's just going to be a sloping area there in the front, a little bit on the sides. But most of it will be that wildflower meadow, which, you can look over and enjoy the open space. It's just not something you can, play Frisbee on or something like that. So we're pulling it back, we're raising it up. There's going to be, the living space of a home, it's awkward to go upstairs. So we're elevating it with some fill around it. When you deal with a flood zone like this, you cannot have a basement. So the basement will be removed and you'll get an at-grade crawl space that the floodwaters can come in on the north side and then retreat out that same side. The whole side of the house is exposed as the code is currently enforced with a flood zone. You have to have those waters go in and then retreat on their own. So we're leaving it quite low there, you see, about 6.5. And that way the slab is, I think, just a couple inches above that at 6.7. And so you put in oftentimes smart vents, which are vents which automatically open during the floodwaters, but they close to keep the raccoons out. So they're a good match in the flood zone, and there'll be a good number of them all along that north edge because there'll be quite a bit of water that comes in and comes out. I've seen them work. They work beautifully. There's no real issues with that design. Again, you're back from the big wave action with everything and protected. The waves would break, and it's a nice strong foundation, not particularly high. It goes from 7 to 12. So it's not a huge structure, and there'll be some fill around it. So very strong and pulled back. And again, it's all about making it a better condition than what's there now. You'll see when the DEP issued their letter, they made a note in there that when you do those redevelopments, you're to move, the proposed work, when you're doing redevelopment, including expansion of existing structures, shall be located. So it's either outside the riverfront or toward the riverfront area boundary and away from the river. And then there's the exception for the 310 CMR 585 F and G, where you can get a little closer if you do the 2-to-1 mitigation, which I was speaking of. So we carefully balanced the alternatives analysis or the 2-to-1 mitigation. So the hardscape in the buffer is mitigated at a 2-to-1 ratio. It is quite a bit of a wildflower meadow that you're picking up there. So it's, I think, a nice win for the environment. Instead of having that lawn right up to the bulkhead, it'll be a beautiful flowing wildflower meadow. The house is pulled back, it's elevated up. We've got a conventional style septic system that's way back from the river. We got it outside of the riverfront, and there's actually an existing leaching back there now. We're just tabling it off, making it a little bigger. And, of course, it's complete overkill for the amount of people that'll actually be in the house, but the code is the code. And so we do have to put a nice big leaching field there in. But again, the lower river isn't particularly nitrogen sensitive. It's well back, and it's the same number as bedrooms are there now. And if you look, it's almost an 86,000 square foot lot. So it's just a huge tract of land, and it's all native in the back. And that's our plan, to just leave that be back there for the privacy buffer off the road, off of South Street. That, I'm sure the new owner will maintain something very similar to what's there now. So a couple of abutters on the north, the Childs are on the south. It's raised up. It's fully compliant with the FEMA regulations. It's fully compliant with the health Board of Health and Title V with a nice new modern septic system replacing. We've got a note there that all the roofs are going to be collected with the gutters and downspouts and directed to dry wells, which we've shown around the building in various places. The driveway is all pitched to drain. You'll see we've got a grass swale on the north side. The driveway winds down, and there's a lot of pervious area here to soak up that water. And then we've got the nice Cape Cod sand, so there will be no issues with that. We did take a look at the site. It's a little over an acre, and Kelly reminded us we've got those new stormwater regulations, which even on a single-family house, which is exempt under the state, the local reg does pick that up due to MS4 regulations. So we'll be filing for that. But you can see between now the uncontrolled runoff from the home and the drive is now going to be swaled and properly handled. We're working on a submission for that. So I expect we'll probably do a continuance until you get that documentation and resolve it. But we wanted to open this up to see if it was any initial thoughts on this. Again, it's we're pulling up a tremendous amount of lawn, putting in a wildflower meadow, pulling everything back, raising it up to FEMA compliance, and not increasing the bedrooms. And it's, as a practical matter, going from 2 dwelling units to 1. I think the population on the site will net go down a little bit. So that septic that's well back, I think will be last a long time. In other words, it's not going to go anywhere. So I would probably leave it at that. There is a narrative which goes through each of the performance standards. I think we hit the riverfront fairly thoroughly. But if you have any other questions, on the brief alternatives analysis or the other issues on the site, we'd be glad to answer them. And Mr. Gilmore, Mr. Kenny would be glad to answer any questions on the building side of the matters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Well, I'm going to just throw in my 2 comments or my 2 cents right now. I don't disagree that there's a huge amount of difference between lawn and wildflower meadow. I think while wildflower meadows are great, I think we could probably do something a little bit more challenging in the mitigation department. But besides that, the other thing I'm looking at is like, this is a big lot, and I'm looking at the way everything is laid out here, and I'm kind of wondering, asking the question I'm asking here is like, when we have such a big lot, why can't we just move everything? It's a total raise and replace. Why can't we move everything out of the 100-foot? So that would be that would be my biggest concern right now. Is like, I think you could manage to get everything that you're looking to do, but you could still move everything out of the 100-foot. It'll be out of the inner riparian zone altogether. There might be a little bit of contour grading that needs to be done, but you would have a lot more room for a lot more mitigation if you're gonna be going that route as well. So that's my comment. I'll turn it over to the rest of the commission if anybody else has any comments, questions.
Well, I have to agree with you, Mr. Chairman, on moving it back. And the other thing was with the lawn, yeah, the meadow is better than the lawn, and you're pulling up all the lawn, but what about all the trees that are disappearing on the rest of the lot? I mean, that's a lot of stuff that's getting torn out for a paved driveway on top of it all. That's a concern there.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I completely agree with you about getting the project out of the 100. And Ellie's comment about a pervious driveway was also something that stood out to me.
Or at least the portion that's within the riverfront area.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't. I guess we'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Paul?
Yeah, I agree with the comments.
Okay. Anybody else?
I agree too, especially about the paved driveway, moving things back. I am concerned about the amount of woods that's going to get lost.
Anyone else? Kelly, any comments to add there?
Yeah, I just will add in with respect to the riverfront area regulations. I wanted to clarify, based on the plan, would it be safe to assume that everything beyond the mitigation area, that whole area will be cleared of vegetation? And there'll be some disturbance or other because there's regrading or hardscape or structure pretty much with the entire riverfront area from the mitigation area back.
So what you're asking me is, would we necessarily clear the whole site? It may well be that between the Childs and us, we might save, where it says state silt fence work limit line. We might look at saving a tree or two in there. The entire riverfront right now, if you look at an aerial, it's a big lawn, and then there's a few trees, but underneath all the trees, it's developed. There's hammocks and playground and things like that. But I would say that to the extent that the plan right now might be to save a tree or three in there, specimens, but we'd like permission to judiciously look at those. What I would say, just big picture here, is what we really have to look at is this lot. If everyone on the river could move back the same amount, I think that would be great. But what's going to happen to this house, if you move it back that far, you're going to have tunnel vision. And rather than the magnificent view of where they are right now, of being able to look down the river and see the traffic from your living room and so forth, you're going to instead put the blinders on this house, and the value would plummet quite a bit. So I think another thing to think about is, sure, we're moving it back, but there's trees on the other side that are going to go if we move everything back, and then that person might be tempted to have, more area behind the house. Whereas if we leave it in the traditionally developed portion out front, again, moving it back significantly on the order of 50 feet from where it is now, and greening up that whole front with low impact plantings like wildflower meadow, it's a nice improvement over the do nothing approach, or redeveloping in the same footprint. So, I think it meets the performance standards. If it wasn't a bulk, if this was a native house lot and there was, it was all natural, sure, it wouldn't be a good argument. But the house right now is very close to the river. We're moving it back a full 50 foot. It's an extremely, valuable property because of the view and the proximity to the river. People like to be, they're paying the taxes to be on the river. They don't want to be, over on South Street, So I would, encourage you to look carefully at all the things that we're giving, that we're doing that are an improvement, taking things out of the riverfront. The square footage is going to go down quite a bit, and there would be probably more lawn in the front, and that's, not the ideal situation to have the big lawn right there against the river. So would like you to look carefully. I think what I'll do in the interim is present the abutting houses to show that blinder effect, especially the view to the south, of how prominent those houses are, and to push us way back behind the two neighbors, I think is a little unfair, especially if we do meet the performance standards. So I would leave it at that, and I'll take the continuance, and we'll ponder these things.
And unless I'm reading the scale wrong, the house is only being moved back less than 20 feet, like 15. So this assertion that you're moving it back 50 feet is inappropriate.
Well,
And the
the
pool,
house-
certainly, I'm talking about the house.
No, the pool is moving back, but
I'm
the
not
house
talking
is
about that.
50. See, you've got the.
I see the 100, I have the 20 scale, and right now I see to the 100-foot line is being 15 feet.
So the house is, from the front porch to the front porch is well over 50 feet. We're moving this house back. I don't know what you're looking at, but I can get a scale and confirm that for you.
Basically, the new house, the house we're proposing,
This line
the
here.
front of the house, the riverside house is almost even with the back of the house that's there now.
Where's the front
So
of
we
the
moved
house?
it one whole house
Well, why are
back,
we talking about
away from the
moving the house
river, the
back
whole
2
house.
years?
So
And that house is about 50 foot deep.
I'm going to color in the front of the porch here.
I think the confusion
In the
is
front of
Dan,
the
that you're
porch
talking
here.
about the old house. We just talk about moving the new house.
Well, it's 55 feet back that we're moving it now. So you're talking about moving it more than that. Yeah,
talking
from
about
the,
That's
existing.
existing. I'm talking
From
about
the-
the new house to the 100-foot line.
I see. Well, again, all right, so I thought you were questioning whether I was moving at 50 feet or not. We're certainly moving over 50 feet back already. And the other houses are, approximately in line with this house, so now we're pulling it back. So what you're asking is and my interpretation was you're trying to get the pool out of the 100.
We're talking about the house.
Oh,
I mean, I'm
well,
talking about everything.
Okay.
well, they see that's a big difference now.
It is. You're right.
So, and again.
That ends up being 40 feet for the pool, the edge of the pool, 42. But I was, the chairman and I were looking at it a little differently. And I tend to agree with them.
Yeah, you'd have to move everything back 50 feet to get the pool out of the inner riparian zone. But again, I think, given where the abutting houses are, and you can see here, we're on the mouth of the river. There's an established bulkhead there. There's riverfront work. It's not as though we've got an undisturbed buffer. It's a putting green right now. And to pull that back, a substantial amount like we are, 35 to 50 feet, we thought was a major concession and pretty reasonable. We don't have to do anything. We could, leave it where it is.
You have,
Do you have an aerial of the? Do you have an aerial
I don't think I do, actually.
with the neighbor, especially the child?
There should be, we usually have something in.
Is there something in the notice of intent?
Not too much. Let me get it.
yeah, I think one of the questions here is like, we keep talking about there are a lot of properties on Bass River that can't afford to do this because they don't have the space, or there's something else to do, that there's going to be missing out on this. This is a very large lot that could easily move everything out of the 100-foot and still achieve everything that you're aiming to do. So, I mean, that's, I'm not so much concerned about the view. That's not the first thing I'm supposed to be looking at from a conservation standpoint. I'm looking at from a wetland standpoint, and moving things out of the 100 would be the absolute best way to do it. We could restore a portion of that buffer then, certainly. And so I think you have more than enough room that you could do all of that. And as far as that goes, I mean, I'm saying the existing house sits at about 31 feet from the river right now. And if you're moving from that point back, I mean, the proposed pool sits at just about 20 feet. So we're really, like, that's all we're really getting. And what I'm saying is I think you have more than enough room to accomplish everything you're asking for, but you can do it outside the 100. That's where I'm coming from on that.
Mr. Chairman, if I can
Sure.
recollect, we did that to a house that was farther up the river, that they had the room to move the house back. And we did have them, and they did move the house back.
Yeah, I mean, we've had this, and again, we can't necessarily always have the luxury of having a large lot that would allow for this, but in this case, I think that would certainly allow for it. But that's just one person's opinion.
Mhm.
Kelly, did you have a question, comment?
I do. I have some comments. I thought it was worth going through the performance standards for the riverfront area just to call out a couple of things. So 10.58C deals with proposed work should be located no closer to the river than the existing conditions, or 100 feet, whichever is less. So in this respect, they actually meet that requirement. There is no development proposed closer to the river. So 10.58D, proposed work including expansion of existing structures shall be located outside of the riverfront area or toward the riverfront area boundary and away from the river, except in accordance with F or G, which allow for restoration and mitigation. So that is, I think that's the key, is that the expansion of structures should be located outside the riverfront area. It doesn't mean that there can't be development within the existing footprint, but no closer, but any of the expansion needs to be back out of the riverfront area. And that's unless mitigation may be approved by the commission as an alternative, but it doesn't have to be. The
Right.
commission's allowed to require that it be moved back rather than allowing for the mitigation in its place. And then the other one, which I thought was worth pointing out in this instance, is 10.58E, where the area of proposed work shall not exceed the amount of degraded area, provided that the proposed work may alter up to 10% if the degraded area is less than 10% of the riverfront area. Again, an acceptance of F and G. And I struggled a little with this calculation because if the riverfront area is 37,000 square feet, the mitigation is about just over 7,000 square feet. It leaves 30,000 square feet of alteration on the remainder of the site, and which is obviously well over the 10% and well over what is being deemed to be proposed degraded area, because the degraded area is really only being assigned to be structure or hardscape like driveways. So it really doesn't take into account the amount of regrading that's taking place and vegetation that's being removed. So I think it's really important in this case to show all of the existing areas of vegetation on the plan so that we can clearly see what areas are considered to be degraded now and moving forward. If there were areas where there is regrading proposed, but they're going to be putting vegetation back in those areas and they're going to be revegetated, then I would then consider that that would be, I think, would count in favor in terms of reducing that overall alteration, because it would be a temporary alteration which would then be revegetated. But I think it's really important for us to see that on the plan so that we can actually determine whether this meets that regulations in terms of that 10% limit on development of the riverfront area. Certainly, I had a discussion with DEP about the project today, and they strongly recommended as well looking at the alternatives that have less impact than what's being proposed, including pushing the structure back outside of the 100-foot riverfront area. And that the plan indicates that there is a lot of space between the leaching field and the structure, the existing proposed structures, that would allow for that to happen. And then just again, I think this point was already made, is varying the mitigation so that it wasn't all just meadow, that there should be some diversity in the plants that are being proposed. That's everything that I have.
So we appreciate that, but I would certainly point the commission to look very carefully at 10.585D, which, it says including expansion of structures. So it contemplates that, yes, we can expand them, shall be located outside the riverfront area or toward the riverfront area boundary. So it doesn't say that we have to be outside as long as we meet the performance standards, as long as we move, no closer and away. And then you do the 2-to-1 mitigation as discussed. It does technically meet the performance standards, but we understand, and I do hear you. You hate to think we're being penalized for having too big a lot, but in this case, again, we're blessed to have a very big lot. So what we will do is we'll take a careful look at it and see if we can, rather than not doing anything and leaving all that lawn there, we'll take a look at it and see if we can slide it back some and compromise with you folks on it. But we'll certainly look carefully at it and restudy. So if we could take a continuance, we could certainly sign an extension. I don't think we'll get this done in a week to have you guys have time to review it in 2 weeks or whatever, but probably a month continuance, and we'll study it and look at it and look at our sight lines. And again, we don't want to make a misstep because it's an extremely valuable property, and that's the reason that it's valued high. And there are 2 homes here, which it could make a lovely estate without doing anything. So we might look at that alternative, but we'll certainly consider what you're talking about and go from there. But if we could take a continuance while we look at that, we would appreciate it.
We'll be looking at March 17th. Is there anybody in the audience have any comments, questions on this one? Anybody out in Zoom?
No hands?
Yes?
No.
No.
hands raised.
Okay, then would somebody like to make a motion to continue this to March 17th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll see you on the 17th on that one.
You're not signing this again.
All right, we're just
Commander.
passing it down.
All right, next order of business, another notice of intent for Elizabeth M. Hooven, 12 Railway Bluffs, Yarmouth, proposed enclosure of existing porch within the buffer zone to Salt Marsh and Coastal Bank. Just as a note, this has received its DEP file number. This is for SE 83-2322.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Dan Ojala with Downkeep Engineering. With me is Chris Kenny, who is an old friend of Elizabeth Hooven and is going to be helping her out with a very simple little project here at 12 Railway Bluffs. This is an area that's sort of on the inner harbor. They've had a ton of accretion out front, as kind of was discussed before, and I guess blessed in some manner because there's just a big buildup of sand out front rather than cutting in. So we're looking at a seawall that was stabilized many years ago. There's some hardscape and so forth. And way back from that, there's a raised patio deck. And on that, there's a little porch. And all we're simply asking to do is enclose in that porch, just to make it more of a 3-season type room that is a little bit more comfortable, in the shoulder seasons. So we proposed a little work limit line just off the corners of the deck. There should be a little bit of a plan in there showing how we're going to do that to enclose it. But we thought as a pretty modest project, there are some resource areas because you've got the seawall, so it's technically a coastal bank. And the deck is, proud of the normal setback, but again, it's a compact area. It's on the inner harbor, very native out front, but up on top, right near the house, it's highly developed and simply wanted just to kind of enclose in that porch. So we thought this one a pretty modest project. I won't take the time to expand any more on it. I think everything in the file is pretty straightforward. There's some photos and a description of the work and the resource areas and how they will not be affected by the modest proposal. And I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I've got no issues. Anybody in the commission?
No problem.
Anybody? No? Kelly? Anybody in the audience? Anybody on Zoom? All right, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with the special conditions?
So moved. I'm sorry.
Okay, and then Rick second?
Yes.
Okay,
Who made the motion then?
David? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey,
One nay? 6-1 then.
Mr. Chairman, who seconded that?
I did.
Yeah, okay. And who made the motion?
David.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next order of business is another notice of intent for Alberto and Becky and Matino for 84 Homer's Dock, Yarmouth, proposed construction of a pool, patio, and septic upgrade within the buffer zone to an isolated wetland. This too has also just received its SE file number. It is for SE 83-2323. This is also, just to let everybody know, this is a bylaw only filing. It's not under the jurisdiction of the state act. Bylaw only.
Local Yarmouth bylaw.
Yarmouth bylaw. Oh.
Good evening, Chairman Hoops and members of the commission. For the record, Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Downkeep Engineering in Yarmouth Port, and helping Alan Becky, the new owners of the 84 Homer's Dock Road, out with juggling some things around on the site. So this is an interesting site. It's a little bit unfortunate because was some misunderstandings in the past. We had done a septic upgrade on this site many years before they owned it and put the leaching fairly close to this little IVW that has popped up. And so we're in the unfortunate situation of having a septic fairly close to a resource area. We're talking about putting a pool in behind, but they had the idea that if they spent a little bit more money, they could actually get the septic out of there near the wetland and put it way up in the back, you know, at some expense, but then would be able to, you know, tuck a pool near the house and mitigate some areas near that wetland where they've got a lawn fairly close to the little IVW and make it what we would consider a better situation than what is there now. So again, and some of you may remember on the other side of this little BVW, and the reason that this was flagged, I suppose, is that there was a little driveway that was relocated. I think they were in the 35 buffer, pretty close to it. And I know there was some discussion about that with the headlights and the angle of the drive. So that was approved, but as part of that, where we were informed by the former agent that it wasn't regulatable, but now come to find out it is regulatable. It's just a little bit over the 3,000 and it's, you know, pretty wet. So we concur it is a vegetated wetland or a little isolated vegetated wetland. And so those are the type of wetlands that would not fall under the state act, but you do have the provision in your bylaws which would allow enforcement of it. And so what we think we're doing is making a situation better. We're pulling the leaching field out of there. We've got a much bigger distance to the septic leaching than is where the pool is now. We're popping the garden shed and relocating that much further from the resource area. There's a couple of piles of compost that we noticed that were an area that we targeted for some mitigation. So you've got on both ends some shade tolerant sweet pepper bush. Kelly asked that we just kind of enhance those areas. So we brought in some sweet pepper bush on both sides that should, with the removal of some of that older clippings, nicely revegetate the buffer there. And we thought this might be a good candidate. We just get a lot of sun for some wildflower mitigation, and then we put a fence right against it so no one would get over there and mow. So the pool fence kind of acts as the work limit line, a little bit of fill, introduce the pool, a modest 16 by 32 with a hot tub, and it's all landward of where the leaching field was. So rather than, you know, kind of reverse where you've got effluent seeping out towards the wetland, now you've got a sealed unit that is not seeping any effluent near the resource area, and that leaching is up on the north side of the house. So we thought it, you know, pretty good. Again, it's unfortunate that that was missed before, or just misinterpreted, but we all learned a lesson on it, and we think we've got a situation here that the Matinos can have a nice little pool and make the environment a little bit better net. I'll be glad to answer any questions. We've got some mitigation calculations on there. I know you guys don't sometimes, in the riverfront, you certainly look at it, but the 0 to 50 and the 50 to 100, and we're looking at some increase in hardscape. But again, I think the most important thing is we're getting rid of the hidden leaching field that's close to the wetland and moving it away. And we are putting more plantings than hardscape. So we thought it a good proposal, and I'd be glad to answer any questions if you do have them.
Where was the original?
Thanks, Dan. So I mean, I'm not real super thrilled with the pool that far into the 50. I guess I can live with it if I can see a little bit better mitigation. Again, I'm going to say the same thing about wildflowers, and I love wildflowers. I love wildflower meadows, but I also like to see vegetative height diversity in my mitigation planting areas. So I'd like to see a little bit more, a little bit more diversity that way. I think you had misspoken. You had said the pool fence sheet, as proposed, would be acting as a work limit, but that's more of a no disturb zone, right?
Long-term limit of activity, right? Not as the limit of work, obviously, is the edge of the lawn that's down by the BVW now. Yeah, so I stand corrected on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would just like to see maybe the extension of the pool fence on both sides with some sort of designation, no disturb zone in that area. Beef up the wildflower meadow to include some other vegetation that gives a little bit more height diversity, and then I'm good with it.
All right, sounds reasonable.
Anybody else on the board?
No.
Nope. Okay.
Kelly.
I have just one
yeah,
question.
Paul?
Look at the plan. I see the leaching field. Where's the leaching field, the old leaching field?
So it's dashed in lightly. It doesn't really show well on the scan on the screen, but I'll color it in here for you in a darker hatch so it's visible, but it's proud of the edge of the pool. That's it there. This whole area is all leaching. So we're basically pulling that out and putting the pool back further from the wetland than the existing leaching.
Oh, I know. Let's
So
see if
that's
it
the
goes,
argument for it being an improvement.
I guess it was all in here.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Kelly?
So I did have a concern. I mean, typically pools are permitted outside of the 50 rather than outside of the 35 foot. So this is usually something that would maybe not be approved or would be required to be moved outside the 50. With a better variety of mitigation, then that certainly does bring some improvement along the edge of the wetland there. So I think that's definitely a positive. Though I am concerned that by moving the leaching field, you're then going to have to remove all the vegetation along the side of the house. So we are having kind of a net loss of vegetation. So maybe, even increasing the mitigation to make up for the loss of vegetation in that area would be a good thing to see. And then just procedurally, this was filed through Mass DEP, even though there's not a jurisdictional wetland for them. They did come back and ask for the calculations to show that it's not isolated land subject to flooding, but I'm not really sure there's a need for that because there's no buffer zone to that. So even if it is, it's still not a jurisdictional area. So, but I would suggest, if you get an approval, is that you actually withdraw the filing through DEP.
Okay.
And we will just issue a bylaw only order of conditions, so not through EDP, because then you don't have to be closing it out through that process. So, and I guess you could probably just submit a letter withdrawing it from review under the state regulations to make that clear.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then there was a member of the public who had asked if we're ready for public comment. There was somebody who wasn't able to attend but did have a letter they wanted read into it.
Okay, anybody in the audience? Okay, I'll
There's
do the
somebody-
letter and.
there's somebody in the audience.
Okay, so if you want to come up to the podium there and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Mary Prexis, and the address is 122 Lookout Road. And we are abutters on the east side, which has the wetland. And we're concerned about the impact of whatever well, the wording was, removing, filing, dredging, or altering the area.
Excuse me, could you
subject to
take off your
protection.
mask and talk into the mic?
Sure.
If
Is
you're
this better?
comfortable
May I
with it.
do this?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No, that's fine. That's fine. The letter that we got indicated that there could be dredging, let me see, removing, filling, dredging, or altering the area subject to protection. We think the plan is good, but we are concerned about how what is being done will impact the wetland on our property, which is lower than 84 Homer's Dock property. And even I'd like to know what's going to be done on the other side where there are trees, if the trees are going to be taken down or what's going to happen with that. But if you approve this, we just want to be sure that it's not going to impact the wetland on our property and flow over into our driveway.
So I could attempt to address?
Go ahead. Dan.
Through the chair. So that is boilerplate language that's in the bylaw. You know, we're not altering the wetland or dredging or anything like that. But
Okay.
that's all the things that trigger in the Wetlands Protection Act, a filing for a notice of intent so luckily that's not the situation at all. With respect to you, and your property, I think principally we're removing some compost up near your corner, planting some shrubs. We're pulling the shed further away from your property. We're going to be putting a new fence up on the order of 15 feet back from the lawn and revegetating that area. So in the natural course of things, that buffer should increase. We'll probably be looking at putting a row of large bordering shrubs against that as well. The chairman has requested some more woody plantings and some diversity in there, and that'll kind of transition. As you get a canopy, it'll go lower and then out to the field, I think would be a nice transition. So mostly just be replanting, no real fill that will impact the hydrology of the area. A pool in and of itself usually can take a few inches of water and soak it up when there's a rainfall. It tends to act like a big reservoir and mitigate against flow off of the area. And net is very little impact. And, to the extent that the leaching field is closer to the wetland, it's going to be further away. There would be a few trees in that area that would be clipped, but it's, again, you're over here and the house is here, so it wouldn't be directly impactful to you. And I think we'll probably introduce some new vegetation as was requested. I think I would propose to the commission that we extend the pool fence both north and south. I think that was kind of requested, but if we come out with a rail fence to the south and revegetate that corner, and then this is already extended up here, but we can revegetate up here between the work limit line and get rid of that lawn. So you'll have an even beefier buffer all along that edge. So I think in that way, it'll be actually a net improvement in the screening to the resource area, which is what they worry most about, but also tangentially to your property. It'll be an increased buffer over what's there now.
Okay, thank you.
That's exactly what I was thinking about in terms of the pool, the fence extension, Dan, so that would be good. Is there anybody else in the audience? Seeing none, anybody on Zoom? Right, and then we've received one written comment. This is from Deanna DeRocha of 92 Homer's Dock Road. She said, "Hi, Kelly. Thank you for speaking with me last week about the proposed work at 84 Homer's Dock Road. I'm going to butter and have just have a couple of concerns all surrounding the wetland adjacent to our properties. I am concerned that the wetland will be impacted either by backfill or receding soil." I think the way she's using that, I think she's talking about eroding soil. I am not sure what the work will look like when complete, but I do know that there is a great deal of wildlife that live in that area. It is also a corridor for fisher cat, fox, and deer to travel from the conservation area across from my home to the Bass River Rod and Gun Club. I am also concerned about where the water will pool if any backfill or runoff occurs. I'm sorry I will be unable to attend tonight's meeting as I am working. Okay, so I think part of that was already answered in the first comments that Dan made. Anything else that you wanted to comment, Dan?
No, I think we pretty much covered most of those issues, but if you anything specific, I'd be glad to address.
Okay, anybody else? Any further discussion among the board?
Bill?
Kelly, anything else? So how much time do you need for this, Dan? You want to?
Well, let's put it on for 2 weeks because it's an easy continuance if we have to, but I think we can get this done within a week.
Okay, so we're March 3rd, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do I have a motion to continue to March 3rd?
So moved. Ellie?
Is there a second?
John.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. All right, Dan, we'll see you in 2 weeks then.
Thank you.
This isn't working either?
No, that's fine.
Do not sign.
Although I will need it to sign.
It looks beat up.
All right, next order of business is a continued notice of intent continued from February 3rd, 2022 for SE 83-2319 Patricia Drenzak, 11 Swordfish Drive, Yarmouth, proposed reconstruction of existing bulkhead within land under the ocean, coastal bank, land containing shellfish, and land subject to coastal storm flowage.
I just make-
Thank you.
Hold on, Mark.
I just wanted to make a comment for Commissioner Bishop that this item was discussed at the last meeting and I didn't have any video footage for you to watch, so.
Right.
you'll have to-
So I'm going to recuse myself and go sit in the audience.
All right, so let the record stand, show that Commissioner Bishop has recused himself from this hearing. Mr. Burgess.
Yes, I'm going to be real short. I think everything was discussed the last time. The outstanding issues were the certificates of compliance, and they're on the agenda, so I'm assuming that those are all been satisfied. We had discussed all the aspects of the project before, and nobody had any questions, so that's it for me.
Okay. Commissioners, anybody?
No.
Okay, so the only thing that I had was we were looking at an issue with the vegetative buffer, right? Kelly, that's this one, right?
So just reviewing, yeah, when we reviewed the certificate of compliance, did you want to see the old plan or the? There was a 10-foot vegetated buffer that had been approved under the previous bulkhead order of conditions. And that was installed as a gravel buffer instead. So I just wanted to bring that up because the commission may wish to continue with that, well, have that revert to being a vegetated buffer as it was originally required to be under the original order. But that was the only comment with regard to this order.
Okay, so by doing that, then that we can close this hearing out and take care of at least the first COC. The second one would wait until the vegetative buffer is established,
installed, yeah.
right? Okay. You understand what we were saying there, Mark?
I think I didn't see that in the, I know it had, the original order was, showed a 10-foot, but I didn't know if it was vegetated or not. And we talked about the gravel buffer. When these, in these areas that are subject to flooding, and we've done another project like this, if you plant, one flood wipes everything out. So I felt that the gravel buffer does the same job. It's not going to, it's filtering out anything that might head that way, but without the risk of plants being, the expense of the plants being killed if it floods, because all those properties are really low there. Trying to find the old. I should have it here somewhere.
It's on one of these.
I have the one for.
Proposed buffer plantings is shown in the profile.
Oh, okay.
there. And then it's described as being Rosa rugosa plantings in.
Which order was that in, Kelly? Was it for the
It
bulkhead?
is 1289.
Okay,
the
I'm
bulkhead.
yeah, I'm looking at that. Where is that in there?
Look in the, do you have the plan? Do you want to look at the plan here?
Oh, it just says there shall be no lawn within the area 10 feet immediately landward of
Yeah,
the
and-
proposed bulkhead.
And then on the
the plan.
profile plan, it says vegetated buffer.
Oh. Well, I guess, yeah, I don't,
Somewhere I saw a reference to Rosa rugosa, but now of course I'm not going to be able to find it.
Yeah, I don't know if we necessarily need to
We
have.
don't really need to have Rosa rugosa, no.
It could be something, it could be something different.
does it say that? Here's, is it? Oh.
So there you go, proposed
wouldn't the
buffer
order-
plantings to consist of Rosa rugosa, bayberry and beach grass. It's a note at the bottom there.
Wouldn't the order supersede what was on the plan though?
But the order confirms that by saying no lawn within 10 feet.
Yeah, but
The plan tells you that.
What the detail is of
What the
it.
detail of the,
I guess, okay, so, well, I guess my question to the board is, under the circumstances of flooding and things like that, like I said, do you feel that the gravel buffer serves its purpose? It will go back the way it is and function as it has for 20 years.
actually, I prefer, well, first of all, I prefer not to oversee or overturn a previous commission's decision. So, I mean, I would say, I would always go with the original, what the original intent was. I think in general, it's always better to have some sort of planting rather than hardscape. So that's my opinion on that one.
I understand. When I looked at the order, I just said, I looked at the order and that's when it said no lawn. I'm like, oh, well, there's no lawn.
Yeah, no, I get you. It's like,
Yeah.
but it's, I mean, it's clearly, it is clearly spelled out in the plan of record for SC 83-1289.
You know, and we don't know what transpired for that on that hearing, but
Which is why I don't like to sit there and say, okay, well,
what do
we don't care. We don't care what they did back in
I mean, they could
1990, is
have,
it?
whoever did this back then could have given you the same argument, and then the condition that went in the order was simply no lawn, and it meets the order. So I without revising the plan.
Oh,
So
well, it's
we don't
Arnie,
know what happened, but the point
it's
is,
Arnie Ojala who did this one.
yeah, back in 1994.
1994.
I was out in the field.
Dan was just doing the surveys at that time, right? So anyhow, that's how I would like to close it out. I'd like to do it with a vegetated buffer, respecting what was originally done from the old plan. I think it would work out well with the new plan that you're proposing tonight. So that would be my direction.
I agree.
Nope.
Okay, Kelly, anything else?
Nope, just to include the DMF conditions with the exception of the height limitation.
And will you need a new, a revised plan then showing the vegetated buffer, right?
Yeah.
And a planting list then, right?
There you go.
And you'll get more
somebody's
than,
paying attention. I like that.
you'll get more than a meadow.
There you go. It's like it's getting ugly here now. We're gonna have to throw the cage up pretty soon. All right. So we all
He
good with
knows.
that?
He
You're good with
knows.
that, Mark? You understand we're going?
I do. So you can close out the COCs, but you'll put the buffer as part of the new order. Is that what you're saying?
No, we'll close. Well, I don't have an. For this one, we can close it out, but we have to have a plan within, what, 21 days of today, right? So as long as we can get
14
a
days to give us.
14 days, okay? So I
this-
don't have a problem closing this out,
Yeah.
but just you have to understand that you have to give us that plan then with the planting plan and everything else, the revision within 14 days. So we have it in enough time to turn it around and get it out within the 21-day requirement.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this was a sketch plan, so I can do that myself.
Yeah, and so with the special condition, then that says if we don't receive it within 14 days, then this will automatically turn into a denial. So do you want to do it that way, or do you just want to continue it? So you,
Well, it's safer on my end to continue. If I get run over by a bus tomorrow, I'm not going to make that deadline. So,
or
would be
you
safer.
lose the cage match with Dan there. So you want to continue then, Kelly? You're good?
Okay.
2 weeks, good?
yeah, I'll choose a planting list. Kelly and I can work on the list, and I'll get it on the
Yeah,
plan.
so the plants that were on here minus the rugosa, bayberry, beach grass, etc.
Oh yeah, you do.
Wait, say again?
Bayberry, beach grass, and then beach plum.
You could do beach plum. You could do inkberry.
Well, we can do anything
Sorry,
off.
Dora.
We can do anything
Do
from the
that.
list. It doesn't have to be what's on that plan. It could be.
It doesn't have to be. You can come up with anything you want, but
But just not all bearberry or
Right.
Meadow,
It has to
beach
be.
grass.
Yeah, I usually try to provide like 5 different
Yep, that's fine.
plants.
5 different plants, great. Vegetative height diversity, short, ground cover, slow and medium is fine for that area. Good.
Mhm.
All right. So do I have a motion to continue just for the plan to March
Third.
3rd?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
And if I show the plan to
I think I have other hearings that night, so if I show the plan to Kelly and she's okay with it, then you won't need me here, right?
That's right. You
Cool.
got it.
Okay, that'll work.
This plan? Got that. Okay. All right, thanks, Mark.
All right, and then you don't need me for the COCs, those are done, right?
Well,
Yeah,
it
so,
depends whether the commission wants to close out the CUC without the buffer, or whether you want to wait to close it out until the buffer is in.
well, we have to wait for that.
So in which case you will need to deny it and it will have to be reissued because we have to take action within 21 days.
Well, can you continue the request?
We
Just
can't
like anything
continue
else?
the
We
request
can't
because once
continue
we've
it.
received it, we have to take action within 21 days.
No, isn't the action a continuance though? Like
No, we have to issue. We have to
We
issue.
either have to deny it or issue it. There's no continuing a
Certificate of compliance request?
Because the state law requires you to issue or to act within 21 days. Act meaning either deny or issue.
Well, you have an open order and could condition it on the new order.
Well, they are. That's what the revised plan is
I think
for.
it'd be pretty safe to close that out. Just honestly, you have an open order.
Yeah, I mean, if
you
it's
want to
included
be
in the new
aware.
order, it's just.
Oh, that's true. It is in the new order. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
That makes sense. All right.
I mean, the less you see me,
We
the
worked
better,
that
right?
out. All right, so we're all good then. Yeah, you won't have to hang around then.
Okay, I'll get you a list.
Okay,
No
thanks,
worries.
Mark.
Thank you.
Next order of business. Another continued hearing from February 3rd, 2022 for SE 83-2316, Nicholas and Donna Danino, 140 Mayflower Terrace, Yarmouth, proposed extension existing walkway for a pier, ramp, and float within land under salt ponds and land containing shellfish. We have a question or a request to continue this to March 17th. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved, Ellie.
Is there a second?
Second, Tom.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. We have a, oops. I forgot to sign the first, the 11th Swordfish. Oh, we aren't.
Oh, no.
We didn't, right?
We're not signing that.
Don't sign it.
We're not, what about, okay, no
If you want to
sign.
put the signature page inside so it doesn't get crumpled, that would be good.
Don't sign.
140.
Or you could
That's
ignore
the
me.
one.
He's doing very well. He's doing that.
Don't do anything there.
Okay.
Don't sign.
No sign, heavy.
Ellie, if you put the signature page inside it so it doesn't get,
Put the
Get the
signature
Derek.
page
Pass
inside,
that
yeah.
down.
thank you, just so that it get crumpled.
Right.
Oh, you left me more, huh?
Wait, did I miss something? Oh, okay. Next order of business is a request for an amended order of conditions
here.
for SE 83-2308, 80 Wolfen Road, Yarmouth, modifications to approved site plan to add an additional 3 bedrooms, modified deck, driveway and walkway within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Dan,
Good evening.
Is it Wilfred?
Yes, we do.
Good evening. For the record, Dan Ojala from Downkeep Engineering. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer and helping out Josh Bellotta and his wife with a new home that they've recently purchased here at 80 Wolfen. There was Road in South Yarmouth. So this is actually an amended order. You'll probably remember we were in here a little while back. The original approval was issued 12/8/21, so not too long ago. It's for the construction of the single family. And it's on 2 lots, but it's just one house. And there's 2 numbers, but they're merged together. So we're just treating it as one house. What we did was we took a look at that BVW. I don't know if you remember at the meeting, but I kind of commented that, boy, that wetland really climbs up the bank there. And it's a nice sandy area. So we thought that, perhaps we might want to look at that. So we did look at it and it was really crimping the house a little bit and kind of, it was a we think, very overly conservative line. So we had another person look at it. Paul Shea took a look at it and he concurred and did some corings and wetlands samples, and we found that just as it is on the north there, it precisely follows the 4 contour. And that you'll find a lot of times, the reason that wetland plants are wet is because their roots can withstand being soaked seasonally. And that's the reason that the DP relies on them to be so indicative of where you have a wetland or not. And so it does tend to follow the contour, all other things being equal. There are places in town where you've got clay soils and perched wetlands and all kinds of complicated things. This isn't one of them. It's a sandy site, and the groundwater is very stable, and the wetland is well established down at the demarcation line that is now shown on the plan. So what that did is open the site up a little bit and allowed us to fully redevelop that 35-foot buffer and really the 50 for a lot of it. Let me just read this so I don't miss anything. The BVW was recently reflagged by Paul Shea of Independent Environmental Consultants. The new line has allowed for a little bit bigger septic system in the corner, no variances at all. So we fully meet Title V, which is generally your standard of care when you look at things. If there's no variances required and fully meets Title V, then the burden shifts that you guys have to prove a hardship rather than, could certainly be concerned if it didn't meet Title V. The house footprint is the same, so we're not doing anything crazy, just a little bit more room within that footprint. He would like to have the 5 bedrooms, he won't use them all, but he would like to have that. So it's, the rear deck has been altered slightly. I don't know if you remember, but because of the weird way the wetland had cut up, we trimmed off a little corner. So we kind of put that back to where it was. The driveway, rear deck has been altered slightly, is now outside the 50 to the BVW. There was always a concern with precedent and so forth, and you guys were hesitant to allow anything within the 50. And so now with the corrected BVW line, we're well clear of the 50-foot buffer. So that's something that you'd pretty readily approve. Minor alteration of the driveway and the walkway. Much of the proposed driveway now lies outside the 100, so you wouldn't really concern yourselves too much with it. The whole site is in a flood zone, but again, that's pretty typical for this area. It's all fairly low. Alterations of the fenced yard are in the fence and lawn area will be entirely outside of the 35 and largely outside of the 50 to the BVW. So it's now has a net reduction in hardscape within the 0 to 100. But we're not being piggy about it, and we're still fully putting all the plantings there that we were. It's 1,950 square foot of native plantings, and that restores the entirety of the 35-foot buffer. And then we're pulling the work limit line right back to the 50 on the majority of it there. So the modified scope will continue to meet the relevant performance standards of the Act. And your local bylaw, no adverse impacts are expected with the new scope of the work. We included a revised plan with the mitigation calculations, with the hardscape change and the data sheets from Paul Shea. And we respectfully request an amended order issue, believing that the changes are not significant enough to require new filing. It's almost the same plan, just, again, tweaking the leaching and a couple little adjustments here and there. So would appreciate your concurrence with that. And would be glad to answer any questions. Paul Shea was going to try and be online in case you had questions of him, and he may be available if you do. So I'd leave it at that and be glad to answer any questions.
Thanks, Dan. Questions from the commission?
Nope, no, I'll sit.
Kelly? Anybody in the audience?
No
No.
hands.
No hands, okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to issue the amended order
With the existing.
with the existing special condition?
So moved.
Their second?
Second, Ellie.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
Night, Dan.
Night, Dan.
Wow, finally.
That's the order.
Next order of business is stormwater management permit application for continued from February 3rd, 2022, SW 2021-002, Evan Cohen, 125, 133, Route 6A, Yarmouth proposed redevelopment of an existing commercial site, including parking, drainage, and septic improvements. Existing building number 125 to be converted to a doctor's office. Existing 133 will have minimal improvements, including new utility connections. You'd think I'd be able to memorize this by now. We're
sure.
gonna be looking for a continuance, Dan.
Yeah, we're closing in on it. I think we're there, probably 2 weeks, we'll be all resolved. That's my hope.
Okay, is there a motion to continue to March 17th?
Can I just, before we make the motion, March 17th, so that's a month?
Isn't that what that said?
That's what, but Dan just. asked
Oh,
for
Dan,
2
you
weeks.
you said.
I would be hopeful for 2 weeks, if we can read fast in 2 weeks, if there's an issue, but the doctors really would love to get in there, and I think I sent over some information, and I think we're ready to,
Oh, you sent stuff?
I sent some stuff, an email tonight, and I'll finish that up. So I think we'd probably have time. I mean, for the amount of time it takes to do a continuance, a doctor sure would appreciate it. And I've been under a lot of pressure to get my end wrapped up, and I think we're there now, so.
Okay, so
And
we're
then
looking at
worst
March-
case would continue it, but I would be hopeful that they're minor enough issues that we could just do it quickly.
Okay, so.
We
then
don't
do I-
see any issues, Dan. This has been dragging on for a long time.
It absolutely
This is
has.
a group of people that are a benefit
Oh, they're
to
huge.
the
benefit.
town of Yarmouth,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
things just shouldn't go on this long.
No, I concur, and I don't want to say anything negative about it. It's a strenuous process, though, because your stormwater bylaw is carefully written, and, if you parse it and put too sharp a point on some of the issues, can belabor things, so, but I think we've got it in a position now where it should be quickly resolved.
Thank you.
And I'm going to be away next week, so I just want to make sure we keep things moving. So if,
I'll make sure you
I'll
get that
check the
data tomorrow,
material,
so.
yeah, that I've received from you, but we might want to just get that connection with Amanda so that if you do have things that you want to get her to look at, then maybe you could follow up with her next week or something.
I absolutely will. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I've been,
Next week.
well, again, and I do apologize for the continuances, but it's been like a little bit of ping pong, and again, once we get into it substantively, I think it's a nice, safe drainage design, and you'll be well served by having those doctors in town. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Okay. Motion to continue to March 3rd then.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Second was Tom. Mr. Chairman, we're sending back the Wilson Road because there's a second page behind.
Okay, thank you.
Good job, Tom.
Wow. Sharp like.
I got that right. I want to give you 100% credit.
That's right.
That way you'll keep your
What?
job.
I concur.
The continued.
Ellie wouldn't have caught that.
Little do they know.
Okay. You'll see. Now, good night, Dan.
This was Dan's, so I just want to make sure.
This is for Dan.
Yeah,
This is
the Great Island, the 355 Great Island Road, that was your one, right? The COC request with, I think you were, I thought we were going to get a filing for a notice of intent today, but I didn't see that. So it went, did it go before Waterways last week?
Yes, it did.
Oh, yeah, it finally did. Yeah, I think we've got that notice ready to go, but I didn't file it yet, or are we, we're not? Remind me, are we on the agenda for an NOI tonight, or,
No, this is the COC, which.
oh, the
is
COC
gonna be
request?
Continued, but we can't keep continuing the COC because we need to take action. So I'm suggesting we
What do you
just deny it at this point and then refile it.
Yeah,
once.
we did finally get approval of Waterways last week, I think. And the notice, they unfortunately requested a letter from another, we have one letter in support, but they requested another one. And that's pending, so we didn't file it yet. Whatever the pleasure of the board
So
is,
I
it's
think we
it's
just
not going to be,
Deny.
we'll just refile it
Right.
without prejudice.
I think that makes
Can I withdraw without prejudice?
Sure, I guess.
Appreciate that, just so we don't have to say denial. And we'll get that right back in, and that order should be coming in very shortly. Thank you.
All right, and Dan, just make sure you send a note saying it's what you're withdrawing without prejudice, just
I'm
so
going
we
to
have
write
it
a
for
letter
the
right
file.
now.
That's,
I'll give you a note.
okay, we'll put that aside for now.
So do we have to accept that or is it just withdrawn? There's no motion, there's no.
There's nothing to do then, right? Yeah, it's because he's just sending the,
Okay.
so just pass it on down. You don't have to worry about anything.
Pass this down, please.
Urology.
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
Great.
Great Island.
Great Island?
That's the one you just had. You all right?
Want me to find you some water, Pat?
All right, won't need it.
I can get some from the kitchen if you need it.
You
That's
need
the
some water?
urology,
I'm sorry,
Route 6A.
Continued to,
continued.
I know, but I have to.
You need a folder.
I need a folder. Come on,
Come on, he's on his toes here. Come on.
what do you think?
Please,
Take
man.
advantage of it.
All right, next order of business is a certificate of compliance for SE 83-1142 11 Swordfish Drive, Yarmouth.
What's this one?
This was the one that we were just,
That got continued.
yes, with what? Oh, we just had, the only issue we have is
Yeah,
if
the
it's
next-
a
next time. That was
oh, the
355.
driveway.
driveway is paved instead of pervious, but it's the same way as with everything else in that neighborhood, so I don't have an issue with that. Any questions, comments, concerns with that one? 1142, 11 Swordfish. All right, do I have a motion to issue for SE 83-1142 11 Swordfish Drive?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
Yep.
You can
1142.
We're going to get two of those. We'll get
1142. Yes.
I was able to speak to the
1142 and
applicant
1289.
on this property. Is there a chance we can just revisit quickly the vegetative buffer discussion?
You do this one too?
We're just doing.
Very, very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, just to-
Um,
on the first one.
The applicant said that it's possible that that his parents put plants there, but they probably died and then they never got put back. He doesn't know, he doesn't remember. He brought up a good point. He said, well, 10 feet of vegetation, one costs a lot of money. And I said, yeah, and it's more than what we've normally done for these kinds of projects. I think we've been doing 5 or 6 feet. So what he suggested was, can he leave like 4 or 5 feet of gravel and then 5 feet of plantings? And that's more consistent with the buffers we've been doing. So you still get no lawn within 10 feet, but a 10-foot buffer that's a lot. It's more than what we've been doing.
Well, I mean, 10 foot is actually what we've always asked for, but
1142.
you know what? I'm feeling just crazy tonight. So I don't have, if you want to do 4 feet of gravel and 6 feet of vegetation, I'd be willing to live with that. But what about the rest of the board?
Okay.
Okay.
Kelly? Sound okay?
Sure.
Is there any,
I don't have a vote.
any preference as to what, I'm thinking gravel first and then plants, or would you rather have the plants first and then gravel?
I would rather see the plants closer to the grass side. So
Okay.
bulkhead gravel plants.
And mulch or gravel between the plants?
Certainly not gravel.
It's only mulch to start off with and then.
Mulch under the
it should
drip
be ground
line.
cover.
And then you'll allow it to naturalize.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so that was,
1142.
that was,
sorry, that
that
was
was the
for-
actual order.
We already did 1142.
There it is,
No,
1289.
that's,
2319. Okay, so it was
2319.
6 feet of planting.
6 foot planting, 4 foot gravel, bulkhead gravel.
Gravel.
Oh, that was,
okay.
yeah, that was the,
Okay. So did we do both of the swordfish?
Nope, we're just about to do the second one.
here, it's that one that's.
Certificate of compliance request for SE 83-1289 for 11 Swordfish Drive. We were going to ask to
She's gonna change
deny,
it for
but we are okay with that. Where is
Are
our?
you gonna change the gravel and the,
All right, so that's what we were just discussing with, associated with everything. Everybody's good with that? Ready to issue? Is there a motion to that effect?
So when it comes down, just.
So
change
moved,
that to
David.
Is there a second?
Second, Tom.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Sheets in there.
Carries unanimously.
4 feet of gravel and 6
All
feet
right,
of.
that's fine.
Just add that. Did you get Dave and Tom? He made the I'm falling off the table here. No. Hey, hold on a second. We'll slow down.
Where we throw your line here?
I was
I'd
doing,
write it down for him too, but he ran out of
I was
ink.
doing well for a while. but I just-
we're switching it up.
So are we on,
We're about to go to SE 83-2162.
No, it's still a 1289.
1289?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry, and the
Too quick.
motion was made by
I made motioned and
The one
Tom
that's coming down by
seconded.
Tom is the one that we change.
We had a vote on it, right?
Yep.
Everyone's in favor?
All of us.
What do you, I have no idea what's going on now. So what was that? I mean, it was.
All right, so what we do here is they did sign 2 sheets. There we go. Okay, so.
This job is
Yeah.
a lot more fun than I realized.
I'll be falling
So
asleep.
this one, just change this one, saying,
Approved.
yeah, but say 4 feet of gravel and 6 feet of plants.
Okay, 44 stuff.
Okay, gravel.
6 plants.
6. I think next meeting, we should move Ellie down here and see how Paul does.
Okay, now you're all set.
All right.
Well, it only took me 2 years
Look at that pile.
in that pile. Don't knock it over.
No, I know.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Knock
Next
the
order
whole
of business,
file
another
again.
certificate of compliance for SE 83-2162 44 Studley Road.
Studley Road.
Problem with this is that we don't have time of year that we can actually look at the vegetation. So
2162.
2162, yeah.
do we need to add into that? You just have to wait until spring to.
Yeah, I would just
order to inspect.
recommend waiting until spring and follow the recommendations of the restoration specialist who pointed out there was some dead shrubs and bare areas that needed to be replanted.
Okay, I'm gonna throw this. So do I have a motion to deny this? I can't do this. Do I have a motion to deny this COC?
So moved, Ellie.
Was there a second?
Second, David.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. So how do you like that?
Wow, that's
No
the best.
sign.
They even picked up on that, right? All right, here's my favorite part of the
Just
meeting.
moving down.
Easy certificates of request for certificate of compliance for 2 easies for SE 83-2212 51 Bayberry Road and SE 83-48 14 Corsage Road. Do I have an order, or do I have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
For both?
Is there a second?
Second.
Rick?
Yes.
I'm telling you, who did it? Rick and Ellie? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Good going, Rick.
Moving on to other business approval of meeting minutes for February 3rd, 2022. Did somebody read it?
Sign.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of February 3rd, 2022 with one small typo, which can be very quickly rectified by getting rid of Durkin.
You can't leave us,
That'll never
Tom.
happen.
Page 5,
Honest there, David?
last
Good.
line.
5 last, oh, Lawrence Durkin, okay.
We get rid of Durkin and we got it made.
Excellent, thank you very much. Who seconded that? Did anyone? No.
I'm sorry, what?
Did that get a second?
The second?
Second?
Ellie.
Ellie did it.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries
Except for getting rid of
unanimously.
Durkin.
Just
Yeah,
6
get rid of
to
that.
0, 1
Six.
recused.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rick.
Right, other business not reasonably anticipated. Seeing none. Kelly, nothing? All right, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved, David?
Moved.
Is there a second? Is Elliot seconded? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. We stand
That was much
adjourned
faster
at
than I thought it was.
7:25.
I thought we'd be here till 8 o'clock. I thought we'd be here till 9.